The skin on his face had tightened like ancient parchment, stretched across hollow cheekbones where once flesh had resided. His lips, now black and withered, pulled back in what some might call a smile, though no joy ever dwelled there. Through half-closed lids, eyes sunken deep within their sockets gazed perpetually at nothing, while simultaneously seeing everything. This monk had conquered death by embracing it, becoming neither fully alive nor truly deceased, suspended in a twilight realm of his own creation. In the mist-shrouded mountain temples of northern Japan, where winter winds howl like hungry ghosts through ancient cedar forests, some Buddhist monks embarked on a journey unlike any other in human spiritual practice. Their destination wasn't enlightenment alone. It was the transformation of flesh into something incorruptible. What we see in Sokushin Butsu is perhaps the most extreme form of ascetic practice ever documented, notes Dr. Ichiro Hori, historian of Japanese religious practices. These monks literally turned themselves into Buddhas through a process that defies our modern understanding of human endurance. Their self-mummification was no quick martyrdom, no sudden severance from life. It was instead a methodical process spanning years, sometimes decades, of calculated suffering, a practice so severe that authorities eventually banned it, though not before dozens had completed the transformation, leaving behind corporeal testimonies that still sit in meditation postures centuries later. The first phase began with a monk's decision to depart from all that sustained normal life. For 1,000 days, nearly 3 years, he would subsist only on nuts and seeds gathered from the mountain forests, berries that grew wild along rocky paths, and bark stripped from certain trees. His body, once nourished by rice and vegetables, fish and occasionally meat, would learn hunger as a constant companion. As the seasons turned, his flesh retreated from his bones. His stomach collapsed inward, ribs pressed against skin like fingers beneath thin fabric. Where strength once resided, a different power emerged, one born of denial rather than fulfillment. The practitioner deliberately reduced body fat to nearly non-existent levels, explains historian Koichi Shinohara. This wasn't merely starvation. It was calculated transformation of the body's very composition. Yet this was merely preparation. In the second phase, the monk eliminated all grains from his diet. For another 1,000 days, he consumed only pine needles, tree bark, and a toxic lacquer tea made from the sap of the urushi tree, the same substance used to create Japan's famous lacquerware. The urushi, when ingested, caused violent vomiting and sweating. It made the body unsuitable for consumption by insects and killed parasites within. The monk's flesh became saturated with toxins that would preserve it long after breath ceased. His body was becoming its own embalming fluid. Most remarkable about this process is that the monk remained functioning, continuing to pray, to meditate, even performing temple duties, while essentially poisoning himself, notes religious historian Geina Sekimori. We have no parallel to this in Western ascetic traditions. During these years, his skin took on a yellowish hue. His hair fell out in clumps. His breath carried the acrid smell of chemicals. Fellow monks watched his transformation with reverence, knowing they witnessed a man deliberately crossing boundaries between realms. The final phase arrived after 6 years of preparation. The monk, now skeletal and toxic, entered a small stone chamber. It measured merely 3 feet by 3 feet, space enough only for his diminished form to sit in the lotus position. With him came a bell and a tube for air. The chamber was sealed except for the thin bamboo air tube. Inside this stone womb, he sat in eternal meditation. Each day, he rang the bell to signal he remained alive. Each day, his brothers listened for the sound. When the bell stopped ringing, the air tube was removed. The chamber became a tomb. The psychological dimension of this practice is perhaps most haunting, says Dr. Martin Colcutt, professor of East Asian history. To enter such a space knowing you will never leave it alive, to embrace your own slow extinction while remaining conscious until the final moment, represents a level of spiritual commitment almost unfathomable to modern minds. When 3 years had passed after the bell's final ring, the chamber was opened. Most often, monks found only decomposed remains. The practice failed. But sometimes, rarely, miraculously, they discovered a mummified figure, skin like leather stretched over bone, sitting upright in meditation posture. These successful Sokushin Butsu were believed to have entered a state beyond death, not deceased, but transformed into living Buddhas. Their bodies were dressed in monks' robes, adorned with ritual implements, and placed in temple shrines where they remain to this day. It's critical to understand that these monks weren't seen as dead, explains religious anthropologist Tullio Lobetti. In the cosmology of Shingon Buddhism, they had achieved a state of suspended animation, still present, still conscious on some level, still capable of intercession for worshippers. At Dainichibu Temple on Japan's northern Honshu Peninsula sits the mummy of Daijuku Bosatsu Shinyokai Shonin, who completed self-mummification in 1783. His skin, now the color of ancient ivory, clings to his skull. His hands remain fixed in mudra position. For more than 2 centuries, he has neither moved nor spoken, yet pilgrims come to sit before him, believing he hears their prayers. What makes Sokushin Butsu particularly fascinating is that we cannot fully explain how it succeeded. Modern science struggles to account for how these monks achieved natural mummification in Japan's humid climate, where decomposition typically occurs rapidly. There's clear evidence of sophisticated biochemical understanding that predates modern science, notes forensic anthropologist Nancy Lovell. The monks' knowledge of how certain foods and substances would transform their internal chemistry represents a body of wisdom we've largely lost. Particularly mysterious is the monks' knowledge of which mountain plants contained preservative properties and how ingesting toxic substances like arsenic and mercury in carefully controlled amounts would deter decomposition without causing immediate death. One account from a 17th century temple document describes a successful practitioner. His flesh had become as the sacred lotus, impervious to corruption. Though no breath moved within him, neither did decay touch his form. He had crossed the boundary between flesh and enlightenment. The practice wasn't widespread even in its heyday. It belonged primarily to the Shingon sect of Buddhism and flourished mainly in the remote Yamagata prefecture. The knowledge passed from master to disciple through whispered instruction, never written down in its entirety. What's particularly striking is how localized this tradition was, observes religious historian Ichiro Hori. Even as Buddhism spread throughout Japan, self-mummification remained confined to specific lineages and geographic regions, suggesting that technical knowledge was jealously guarded. The Japanese government eventually banned the practice in the late 19th century as part of its modernization efforts. The last recorded successful Sokushin Butsu occurred in 1903 when a monk named Bukai completed the transformation. His mummified form was hidden from authorities by devoted followers who maintained the forbidden tradition in secret. In the shadows of certain remote temples, rumors persist that the knowledge hasn't entirely vanished. Some whisper that even today, in the most isolated mountain sanctuaries, elderly monks prepare for the journey into living Buddhahood, gathering specific herbs and beginning the 1,000-day diets. There's no concrete evidence of contemporary practice, cautions Japanese cultural historian Hiroko Yoda, but neither can we say with certainty that the tradition has completely disappeared. Some knowledge may still be transmitted orally in certain esoteric circles. What compelled these men to such extremes? The answer lies in a fundamental paradox of Buddhist philosophy. To transcend physical existence, they embraced its most material aspect, the preservation of the body itself. In most Buddhist traditions, the body is understood as temporary, something to be transcended, explains religious scholar Richard Boring. But in Sokushin Butsu, we see a radical inversion, the transformation of the corruptible body into an incorruptible vessel of enlightenment. This inversion created entities that existed in liminal space, neither fully alive in conventional terms nor truly dead. The preserved monks became living symbols of Buddha nature, embodiments of the middle path between existence and non-existence. These monks literally became their own stupas, notes Buddhist scholar Paul Harrison, referring to the reliquary monuments that house relics of the Buddha. Their bodies became simultaneously the container and the contained, the vessel and the sacred object. The Sokushin Butsu sits at the intersection of religious devotion, medieval science, and human endurance. Their desiccated forms, still in meditation posture, challenge our understanding of death's finality and life's boundaries. Today, approximately 24 confirmed self-mummified monks remain in Japanese temples. They sit in glass cases or behind temple screens, witnesses to a practice largely forgotten by the modern world. Their skin has darkened to the color of walnut shells. Their eye sockets are empty. Their hands remain fixed in mudra positions, gestures frozen in time. Visitors to these temples often report a peculiar sensation, not the revulsion one might expect when confronting a mummified corpse, but rather a strange sense of presence. Many describe feeling watched, as though consciousness somehow lingers in these preserved forms. The psychological impact of viewing these figures shouldn't be underestimated, says cultural psychologist Takeo Doi. They exist in a categorical space our minds struggle to process, neither clearly object nor clearly subject. This categorical uncertainty creates a unique form of the uncanny. Some visitors leave these encounters convinced they've been in the presence of something still conscious, still aware after centuries of silent sitting. Others dismiss such notions as mere projection of human tendency to perceive consciousness where none exists. Perhaps both perspectives miss the deeper truth, that these monks deliberately position themselves at the threshold between states, challenging our binary understanding of life and death. In the dim light of a northern Japanese temple, a figure sits that has neither breathed nor decayed for over 2 centuries. And as the temple doors close each evening, in that perfect darkness, no one can say with certainty whether the monk's consciousness has truly departed, or whether, in some indefinable way, he continues his meditation across the centuries, watching us with eyes that long ago turned to dust.